Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Mentor Asia Pacific. Here we are, Kadu, one of your Kadu chef, anything like that. We're interviewing Lenny at the moment. Thanks for having us, brother. Thanks for coming along.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Well, you want to introduce yourself and what do you do at the moment?
Yeah, well, I'm Lenny Fejeran. I own this business, several restaurants with my wife, Pika Fejeran, who's also the chairperson of the Chamorro Land Trust Commission. And we're contributing members of this community. Our businesses are all community-based businesses, and the foundation of all our restaurants is basically built by the community for the community. So we work with a lot of different farmers, a lot of other small local businesses, even other restaurants, and we just try our best to put new and exciting things out. We currently own 4 restaurants: Pikas Cafe, Little Pikas, Kitchen, Lingo, and now the newest one, Kadu restaurant. And this is a takeout concept. And all of our concepts have their own different personalities. And yeah, maybe we can go a little bit into that as we speak, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Well, then, where did your inspiration and kind of love for food come from? That you have these 4 different establishments that you're talking about.
Well, I think when you talk about love for food and inspiration, I think those are 2 different things, right? So the love for food, like I think just being Chamorro, being from Guam, local, like I grew up in Agate, like I grew up cooking, so like we cook, as a means to feed the family, our big family. So coming from a big family, my dad had 15 brothers and sisters, and so I have over 100 first cousins. And we would have to cook, in big pots and things like that. And that was just survival. So eating off the land, we would go to our ranch, we would, kill the pig, we'd get the duck, kill the chicken, whatever we need, pick whatever gulai we have, whatever vegetable from the land, and basically put it up in a pot, make some rice and feed the family, right? So that's where the love for food and cooking comes from. But as far as inspiration for the restaurants as a business, it's a completely different thing because the love for food doesn't always translate into business. Yeah, so, versus just loving food and loving people, I think that's where that line gets drawn. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you can't be in this business if you don't like people, mm-hmm. right? And for me, again, building this business was our way of giving back to the community. So we love our island too, and that's a big part of the inspiration of opening this restaurant and all the other restaurants too. Same foundation.
Okay, so you talked about getting food off of the land growing up. How do you incorporate that into all of your restaurants at the moment?
Well, I lived in the States for 10 years, and coming back, it just made me realize that it just makes sense to eat food from our land versus being so dependent on food from California or wherever else it came from, Mexico and whatnot. So coming back, I just wanted to use with Pika's Cafe, I just wanted to use some of that local produce in a different way and kind of show people that, we can break out of the traditional ways of using our vegetables and support the farmers more by being creative, right? Like taking basil, which is not like a traditional herb that we normally use in our dish, and making it become a part of our cuisine, and making it our way, So yeah, that was pretty much the inspiration for using food from the land when we first started Pika's Cafe 10 years ago. And going into Kitchen Lingo is more of like the height of the culinary industry. To me, is Kitchen Lingo is more like, it's like putting the local produce from the land on a pedestal and really like putting a spotlight and making it shine. Whereas this Kadu is just back home. Mm-hmm. I mean, now it's just back to my childhood. So I went, all my travels, wherever I went, California, all over the States, right? And all the inspirations that I took. It's funny because I opened up 3 restaurants without those inspirations, and then my final one, I feel like this is my final restaurant. I mean, maybe the creativity will lead me somewhere else, but for now, it just kind of took me right back home. And so this is the feeling that I want people to feel when they eat here, mm-hmm. Is that it's like right at home.
Okay. So you talked about being in the States for 10 years. What was your journey? What was your mission kind of in those 10 years?
Well, when I left Guam, when I was 18, I mean, I was lucky to make it out of a troublesome childhood and rough teenage years. But when I left when I was 18, I left with the intention of coming back, you know, but at that time, I just needed to get out of Guam. I just needed to split. Like, I needed to get out of here. There was nothing for me here, you know. So when I went to the States, it was pretty much just me and my friends, and at that point, it's like just survival. And then I went to what I knew, and that was cooking, and I just naturally jumped into the kitchen and started using that as my kind of my college or my, you know, professional experience.
So you talked about kind of the differences between love for food and opening up a business. I think a lot of us can always attest about having a love for food because we have our home kitchens and everything like that. But what is it about opening a business that's difficult and also fulfilling?
I mean, you gotta think of it in terms of like a child. I have 4 kids now, and each kid is different, and each of them with their own challenges, you know, separate challenges, their own separate personalities. And now with my 4 restaurants and I have 4 children, I look at them all kind of differently, and I learn from each of them differently. I love them all kind of differently, you know, and I don't know, you just kind of forget how hard it was. It's like you have a kid and it's so hard those first like 2 to 3, 4, 5 years, whatever. And then you just forget and you have another kid, you know? That's kind of like how my approach is with restaurants. Like, it's just so difficult. Like right now, like remember I told you I'm a little distracted today because I've got so much numbers in my head and I don't want to think about numbers. I want to cook. But that's where that line gets crossed, right? You draw the line. Like, I'm not just cooking to feed my friends and family. I'm cooking to survive. You know, this is survival. And I gotta make this thing live just like my child. I gotta nurture it, you know what I mean? And I gotta teach it and learn from it and love it and care for it and be there and put in the time. You know, the first year of your child's life, you should be there with the kid. It's the same thing for the restaurant. That's why you see me here all the time. You know, where you look at my other restaurants, 10 years old, I can kind of just sit back and be like, look, you're good, you know, I'll watch you, but go ahead, run, you know. So now we're seeing how far that restaurant can run. And yeah, that, you know, restaurant is brutal. It can really hurt somebody. It can really affect someone's life. It can change it in a positive way, and it can change it in a really, really negative way. But in any business, as an entrepreneur, you got to be headstrong, and you got to have thick skin. You got to be able to filter everything coming your way, because you can't just be what everybody tells you to be. You got to understand who you are first in order to tell people who you are and how to use your business. But understanding who you are is a very difficult thing. Yep. I mean, I didn't really figure out my place in this life till I was 25 years old. Like, imagine trying to do that as a restaurant in 1 year, especially for a concept like this. But Kadu's so close to home, people are gonna want to tell me how they want me to be. And that's okay with me. You know, I accept the challenge, and I'm the guy for it.
So, you talked about a wealth of knowledge right there about, you know, giving advice, and then, you know, you're just speaking from what your experience was, but, you know, there are a lot of people that cook, there are up and coming chefs that are thinking about, you know, kind of crossing that border instead of being like in a restaurant and cooking for someone, and taking that step that you took and opening your own kind of business. What's kind of a big piece of advice that you want to give them if they're looking to make that cross?
Man, capital. You need money. It's like, gonna quote Snoop Dogg right here. He said, you gotta pay the cost to be the boss. And that's really what it is. Like, you gotta pay to play. You gotta have that money. You gotta have capital. And then if you can't figure out where to get that money from to stay alive, because the first year you're not gonna make money. You're gonna be putting money in all year, putting money in, not getting a paycheck,
how are you gonna eat, right? You're gonna eat all the food at your restaurant, maybe. That's one way to do it. But still, that's food costs, right? And how does that translate? How do you factor that in? You know, like the numbers, the dollars, they gotta make sense. They have to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, don't do it, dude. Like, what are you doing? If the numbers and your financial projections don't make sense, you're just gonna be in a world of hurt, a world of pain, and you're just gonna be working nonstop. But if you're a chef coming up, you know, like my partner Lingo at Kitchen Lingo, he's a in my opinion, one of the best chefs on island, very well-trained chef. And he had a hard time taking that first step to becoming a chef, or from just being the chef to now being an owner. And so that's where me and Pika came in, and we partnered with him, you know, and helped him to take that lead, because it's very difficult, and we know that. Lucky for me and Pika, it was just us two, you know, in the beginning with Pika's Cafe, and even here with Kadu. So it's like we just have each other to depend on. But once you start getting into partnerships and things like that, if you're like your question, if you're an aspiring chef, or you are a chef and aspiring restaurant owner, you got to be careful who you partner with. That's part of the romance, right? Like, yeah, it's got to be there all the time.
Okay, so getting back to opening kind of a business from a chef to partnering with someone, let's go the opposite direction. Let's say that you're somebody that's an entrepreneur and is looking for a chef to partner with, or looking to open up your own restaurant. Like you have kind of that vision from both sides.
Yeah.
Like what perspective would you give somebody that's looking to invest in a restaurant and looking for a chef?
Man, I think if you're just an investor looking to invest in a restaurant with no experience, then you better have that partner with a lot of experience to round you out or to fill in that hole, because it's being in a restaurant. I would just say, first of all, if you're an entrepreneur wanting to invest in a restaurant and you've never worked in a restaurant before, go get a job at Subway or McDonald's or KFC and just see like how hard they work. You know what I mean? Because it's not easy. And then you got to put yourself in that position and say, is this really what I want to do? Do I want to be here serving people, right? Because you're thinking like you're going from an entrepreneur to now a servant, right? You got to be a servant. Like we're here to serve people. Like we're servants. So you can't have that ego, first of all, right? So drop your ego, go work at a restaurant, come work at Pikas, work at Kadu, I don't care. Just go work somewhere at least for 6 months and see if you can survive off that income, first of all, because you're not going to get paid as an investor, right? And see if that's really where your heart is, right? Because if you're just going to get a partner who knows how to run the business, is putting in their sweat equity, then you've totally like put everything you have into this one person. And if you have nothing to fall back on for yourself, you could be finding yourself alone. You know, like, oh, my chef just walked out, this didn't work out, he didn't invest any money, this is all my money, and now he's gone, so you're gonna go find another chef? No, dude, you get in there and you do it, you know. And that's the way I see it. You know, I think a lot of the little restaurants that have longevity, you know, maybe they don't make a ton of money, but they're around for years and years, and these people make a great living out of it. A lot of these Japanese restaurants are good examples. Is you have this one guy who owns a place, does the sushi, does the cook, maybe his wife is like busting the tables, and those are the restaurants that last a long time because they don't depend on anybody else. So as an entrepreneur, I guess that's the point, is what I'm saying, is try to be as independent as possible, to where you're not gonna say, oh, I don't know how to do plumbing, you know, I don't know how to do, dude, you gotta learn. Yeah, you gotta learn, and don't depend on just getting a partner, because I'm gonna say 50% of the time, I mean, that's just my own stats, but my own head, but half the time it ain't gonna work out. Yeah, you're just gonna find yourself alone, and you know, that's just like any relationship, you know, like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Like after the romance is done, what's left? Right? What's left? What do you have to talk about? You know what I mean? And if you can't talk to each other, then you're just gonna split up. And unfortunately, it happens a lot. You know, a lot of people don't realize that 9 out of 10 restaurants are gonna fail. They will fail. So you gotta like almost like prepare yourself to fail.
Yep.
Yeah, you gotta just be ready for it. Yeah, because you don't, if you're going in your head like, oh man, these guys are killing it. They're so busy. Dude, they're selling like 1,000 lunch plates a day. But yeah, they're selling it at $3. Like they're killing themselves. You know what I mean? Like you gotta understand, like there's so much more to just what you see on the surface.
Let's think about like these high school kids now that are thinking, you know, about opening a restaurant. They already have these dreams of grandeur about becoming a chef and doing all these things. Like, you know, there's culinary school, and there's jumping into a restaurant, and you know, working, you know, your way up into the kitchen. What would be kind of your route that you would choose for someone that would kind of want to start out as a chef and then eventually open up their own place?
Man, you know, that's a tough question because everybody has their own different paths, right? Not everybody was fortunate enough to grow up learning how to hold a knife like I was, you know, and cut properly and peel onions properly. I mean, I learned that at an early age, you know, whereas if you're just starting in high school or you're just starting in college where GCC culinary school, it might be a little bit more difficult, but you can catch up. You know, you just got to practice. So I would say just do what you can, get the experience, and the more times you hold a knife and cut something, the better. You know, the more times you deal with spoiled food or the taste doesn't get right, you know, I mean, you're gonna have all these mistakes, but the more mistakes you make, you're supposed to improve every time. And I guess that's the only way to do it. It doesn't matter where you are or where you started. It's gonna take time. Right, you're not just gonna jump in and be this great cook because you watch the Food Network all day, every day, right? Or you can Google a recipe and maybe make one thing real good, you know. But when you start mending techniques and start being creative, you know, then that's when you're probably ready to open up your own place, right? But it's gonna take a while. I mean, I opened my first business when I was 26, but I was already working in restaurants since I was 15. You know, like I got my first restaurant gig at 15, and I've just been working in there for the whole time. But prior to that, I was already cooking and I was already learning from my family. So yeah, it takes a while. Just patience, discipline, show up, man. You know, show up. That's the biggest thing, man, is a lot of people just don't show up. And I showed up every day early, ready to go. That's what's gonna give you the edge, and not everybody's gonna do it. So if you're that type of person, then you're gonna have an advantage.
Let's close out a little bit and let's talk about Kadu. What's the concept for this restaurant, and what does it look like moving forward for you guys here?
Yeah, so Kadu was brought up. Well, it's always been in my heart to do a Kadu restaurant, just because I always felt like Kadu's a real soul food, Chamorro soul food, like, you know, Guam style home cooking. What I grew up with, you know, like I said, over 100 first cousins at this point. But growing up, I mean, there was always, at any given time, my grandma or my aunties had to feed 20 kids, you know. So that for me is just like, that's really nostalgic for me. So, and I know it is for a lot of other people that grew up on Guam. So there just wasn't a place to get this kind of food quick, and I wanted to be the one to do that. And the biggest inspiration really was watching my mom take care of her mom, my grandma, and my grandpa too, and just feeding them fast food, or, you know, they're getting free food or whatever that's donated, and they just won't eat it. You know, they would do it because they don't have time, so they'll go. But really, what they want is Kadu. Same thing for my kids. Like, we're so busy, and you know, even with us owning restaurants, we end up going to other like fast food places just because we're busy, and it's like here, you know, and it's easy. But really, my kids want Kadu, and this is the way they eat their vegetables. And so we decided to create this restaurant to take care of the families that are taking care of others, you know, like their parents or the kids. And it's usually us who are busy on the go. You know, this is a really, really busy area right here in Manila. This is a super busy intersection. And I constantly seeing with all the schools, just families on the go, So we decided this location would be ideal for this concept to take care of families on the go. But it's, you know, it's challenging because when you think of Kadu, usually it's not when the sun is blazing outside, like it's when it's raining. So with this dry season, we've been just trying to get by, coming up with new things like collaborations with our other local businesses like the Sunday's Ice Cream, Supreme de Nancy. We got our new hot sauce, and we just try to do collabs to keep the buzz going and draw more crowd because we're waiting for that rainy season. But yeah, Kadu is just that good feeling that you get at home. So that's why we decided all takeout restaurant, just go home and eat.
All right, guys, we're gonna thank Lenny for being on the show today. That's been an episode for Mentor Asia Pacific. See you guys next time. Thanks, Will.
Hey, Steven, thanks.
Thanks guys for tuning into Mentor Asia Pacific. Once again, I'm out in Sangha. Check out all our social media, that's going to be linked down below. Stay tuned, more mentors are to come. We're going to be releasing a mentor every week. And please leave a comment down below for any mentors that you'd like to be featured on the channel, any business professional, entrepreneur, or anybody that you believe is inspiring and can provide to be a mentor for the youth as well. Until next time, thank you very much. Sangha out.